Welcome to Season 4 of the NAC 4 Business Podcast.
Before we get into today's conversation, Canada Growth Network. Here's the math. A full CRM, email marketing, funnels, and automations for less than a coffee a day. That's $47 a month Canadian with a $1 trial to start. If you're building a business and still duct taping tools together, check the link in the show notes.
Question of the audience. How do you stop your business from quietly drifting towards crisis? Our guest will break down what actually causes businesses to need a turnaround, the actual warning signs most owners miss, and how preventative leadership, clear financial structure, and smart operational habits keep a business stable long before things feel broken. If you want to lead with clarity instead of reacting under pressure, lean in, take notes, and listen closely. This conversation is about building a business that never needs saving. Our guest today is Diesha Cooper from Execuly. She serves as a fractional financial and administrative officer, providing embedded executive leadership to small businesses and non-for-profits. She specializes in guiding organizations through change, stabilization, and, when needed, turnaround, helping leadership teams untangle complexity, regain clarity, and strong financial and operational foundations for long-term resilience. Known for a kind yet effective approach, Diesha bridges finance, operations, and leadership so organizations can move forward with confidence and intention. In 2025, she also launched Siplux, a double-walled glass travel cup. That's basically proof that disciplined execution and thoughtful design can live side by side. Diesha, it's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Welcome. And do you have a favorite quote or saying?
If it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
True. And if they haven't done it and it's still easy, everybody will be doing it eventually. So
That is
what brought you into this work of stabilizing people's workspace and making it, run smoother? It wasn't like, in grade 8, I'm going to do that.
no turnarounds chose me. Uh, It's kind of the way it goes, right? I have to back up and give you a little history to understand how I got into it. I founded a small business with my dad in the industrial space when I was 17. I ran that company in the back office. I was the bookkeeper and the welder as a teenager, learned hands-on in the business, and also ran the back office and administration. And I had pretty much taken over running that business from my dad after about 11 years. And we went through this massive church feud where my dad owed a lot of money to a private lender who was the leader of this organization. And church is a little loose. It's more cults. It was, one of those Christian cult situations. My dad ended up cash stripping the business and moving out of state. And I was 28 years old at the time. I had a 20 and 22-year-old brother. The three of us out of 10 kids were working in the business. And I went to his private lender and gave him my one-page plan of here's what I'm going to do different. And I want to save this business. Will you transfer all my debt? And if he looked at me, I was crazy, and I probably wasn't. You don't know what you don't know when you're a kid and really ambitious of what is doing this wrong. If he had just listened to me, we wouldn't be here. And we bought that business, and I led the turnaround on that and turned it into a multi-million-dollar company, heading profitable over the next 7 years, working in 40 states across the U.S. in industrial services. That was like the diving in head first. And as a very young person taking on a massive amount of debt, it was like a fire under me. It was no. There was no backing out. It was make or break.
Wow. Oh, is it from that experience that you recognize that if, when a ship sails and you're off 2 degrees off course, it doesn't seem that bad, in the first mile or the first kilometer. But,
Yeah.
1,000 units later, it's like, that's a big difference. Is
Oh,
that where you learn? Is that where you learn you're not doing 100% right, and if you keep doing it, you're going to be still off course?
I would say yes in some ways, but also, when I sold out of that business end of 2021, and then I started my own firm consulting in the fractional executive space in end of 2022. So I had a year gap there where I took off, did some consulting. And I think I have definitely learned more in the last 3 years as I've worked with multiple clients. I would say I've tripled my knowledge in these 3 years than the 7 years prior where I was running one business. So I think like there's a lot of different warning signs and um, things you're going to look for, and some of it's instinct, and some of it's like checklist items where you can be like, is this in place? Is this in place? A little both.
Do you have any mentors along the way that help you? Like, having different clients, I get that. So you're getting people running into different circumstances and different setups. But did you have a mentor that kind of said, okay, for you, this, for them, that?
No, I do have a lot of people I consider mentors and brainstorming partners, and I've been doing Harvard's leadership program as well, which I finished one of those this year. But like just one mentor, no, it's more like a collaborative group of people around me that I can brainstorm with and um, bounce ideas off of other consultants who've done things. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Actually, the many hands make light work.
Yes, 100%.
So when people are starting up their business, and even the ones that are smart, that sounds kind of like I'm belittling everybody else. Is there something that people, and I'm not, is there something that people typically get wrong when they ramp up? If they're totally in a greenfield circumstance, I'm going to start me a flower stand. Here I am. Is there something that they kind of ball up or foul up on, or they're opening a restaurant or they're manufacturing, whatever the case might be?
I think probably the most common mistake is using too much financing right out of gate. So you have somebody who has a dream. They want to start a food truck. They want to start a flower shop. These really small businesses that have high failure rates, and they go and borrow money from friends and family because it's not stable enough for the bank to give them money. Or if the bank gives them money, it's 50,000 maybe. And you say, even the smart ones, like, okay, you know, and we often say smart by the people with business degrees or something like that. And then you have the people who are just really great at their job and they've never run a business before. I think across the board, there is this increased optimism when you're launching a business. And they often see the like CFO person as like the negative Nancy, right? You're pouring water on all of our good ideas. Like people are gonna love this. People are gonna buy this. We're not gonna have a problem generating revenue. And then you look at, go to like well-funded startups where they have to really pitch and spend a lot of work perfecting the business model to get capital in the door, and they're sharing equity with that. And seeing this difference of people thinking it's so easy to just go get cash. There's so much money in the world. Why can't I have a little piece of the pie? And it's the biggest complaint of small business owners. They don't have enough capital to run their business. But also 90% of solopreneurs never even reach 100,000 in revenue in a year in the US ever in their lifetime. And 86% of all small business entities never reach 100,000. So there's a massive failure rate for small businesses. And then we see these small business owners going out of business and being just strapped with debt to their family and friends because they signed notes to them and it was not equity infusion. They wanted to keep it all because it was going to be their future retirement, this kind of thing. So I'd say that's like across the board, too optimistic. Yeah. It's what makes us, entrepreneurs great is their optimism and their belief in themselves. There needs to be like a little grain of salt with that when it comes to to a debt that they will have to pay off in the future.
I recall one time in a corporate world, and the CEO is up talking to everybody in the crowd. And he asks people why they didn't do certain things. He says, well, they told us we can't. And on goes the conversation. And he says, it was kind of mean of him to do this. He says, I finally figured out who they were. And he looked over at the CFO. It's you. He did a good recovery. If the money's not there, it's not there. So that's the pragmatic side.
Yeah.
What led you to found Execuly?
So, when I first exited my business, I wasn't sure, what the next phase was for me. I knew it was time to be done with family business. I couldn't be the CFO at the Thanksgiving dinner table. It was just too much. It was to move on from that business and look for new ventures. And at first I took time off. I took like a 4-month sabbatical to study, those things. And then I came back to work working for a consulting firm that picked me up from Chicago. I did 6 months with them and realized I don't like giving advice and walking away. It was not high I mean, I wouldn't say it didn't help my client, but I felt like it wasn't nearly as high impact as if I could be integrated into their business and be much more hands on and spend more time inside their business, especially when it comes to mentorship of managers who need a lot of hand holding and day to day work side by side. So during that phase, I met other people who were in the fractional executive space, which I'd never heard of. And I was like, wait, you're a part-time CFO. Maybe that's what I should be doing. So I quit the corporate thing after a few months and just put up my own shingle and said, you know what? I've always been a partner in a business, but why not just run my own freelance practice? I know how to structure a business. I know how to run a business. I know I'm going to have to do sales work to go get clients, and you can do this. So I gave myself a little pep talk and launched Execuly, and it's been very successful.
So you touched on it, but, when you mentioned I'm working for a consulting firm and I go in and go, here's your advice, and now I walk away. Is that, it's reactive versus preventative, or are you also saying, let me, you have a gaping hole in your strategy or your funding. Here's the advice, and then let's walk through it. Is that what is that what you're doing now in your company? It's like you're actually going, assessment. Here are some solution paths, but I'm also here. Make sure you stay
Yeah,
true.
some of both. So like reactive versus preventative, think about it like patch the hole in the ship or steer the ship kind of situation. And in turnaround situations, I'm also often coming in and just fighting fires. Like we've taken on massive amount of debt. And this is a big thing I see. It's like maybe the second most popular is that established businesses will take on debt for growth. And I'm not talking about M&A. I'm talking about like, oh, we need $100,000 to push this new product with a marketing campaign. Or we're going to launch this new venture like inside their business, and they'll go get, they're small, 2-3 million. They'll go get $500,000 for this growth idea. And then, 2% increase in revenue, and they're just so wrapped with that. And they're on the edge of bankruptcy. This is really classic, unfortunately, because again, that optimism, like really deep belief in a product or the new venture. So when I come in, first it's reactive. We got to fix all these things. We got to be able to service our debt, get cash flow, get restructure people, all these things. But then at the same time, it's preventative because often these people are looking for money to bail themselves out. And it's that rob Peter to pay Paul that just snowballs and snowballs. So it's also saying, we're not going to take more financing right now unless it's for inventory or it's for one of these like really key pieces. But we're not going to take funding to finance payroll or marketing efforts. Like at this point, we're going to cut back and giving them this really strong leadership that says yes, no, yes, and being able to delineate it also clearly explain why. Like, here's what we did in the past. Here's where it got us. Here's what we're going to do in the future because of that. And it's not going to be forever. This is a 3-year plan. Here's our 5-year plan. Those are like, I would say definitely a mix for me of both reactive and preventative, and giving them clear guidance for future operations while also fixing massive problems.
So, what are the warning signs that people tend to, don't worry about it, right? Just plow through it. It's almost like you're driving on a winter road. The snow's there. Just drive through it. It's still a solid road. Oh, you forgot the corner, and you're in the field now.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
Cash flow. This is like the big thing. Like if your financials look good and you're out of cash, there's a big problem that you don't know about. And this is something that have unfortunately seen several times now when I come in and they're like, the accountants are sending us these great reports saying we're doing good, but we don't have money. We can't make payroll this week. Like, what's wrong? And usually there's an accounting issue. They've, put deferred revenue to sales right away or, something. They've chopped up accounts receivable and collectibles are being held for long periods of time. Expired inventory are still on the books. It's a whole collage of things where you can be getting great reports, making decisions based on your accounting reports, and yet cash isn't making sense. And in that situation, you need to get help right away from an expert. If you're running out of cash while your financial reports look good, we've got a problem.
Well, how often do you revisit or review within a company? What I'm thinking of, obviously, when things were set up, the accountant, or the bookkeeper, in this case, is probably the bookkeeper. All they're doing is, hi, I get A, I do B, you get C. And if you're siloed, right, you're not cognizant of all of a sudden, well, the product you just counted has expired. I find that happening in the fridge every once in a while. I'm like, that we're not going to eat that. It's growing hair and it's got eyes and it's winking at me. No, let you go. How often do you revisit what your process is inside that space?
That early on, if we're doing a turnaround, we're constantly updating process. It's like weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. We're constantly looking at the process, making sure um, we have the safety nets in place. But I also would add that I think we're seeing a lot more of this siloing as outsourced bookkeeping is being pushed as the way to do it. Like people hiring in-house bookkeeper, accounting department, or like an office manager slash bookkeeper, which was yesterday's solution to bookkeeping, has just really gone down. And these outsourced bookkeepers are just soaring, right? But they promise like, oh, we'll do your books for $500 a month, and or $1,000 a month, economy accounting. But then you get McDonald's style accounting and you're running your whole business based on those financial reports, right? That they're doing. And they have no visibility into the back end operations of your business. And from a historical perspective, like if you're a small service-based business, okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you're a very complex business working like e-commerce with high inventory or multiple products, accounting used to be a lot more robust and have a pretty good sight into operations and understand what's going on and be connecting with fulfillment managers, things like this, to make sure what's on the floor is what's in the books. So I think that some of this is just simply our praise for automation and outsourcing. It's one of those things I think some businesses need to reconsider and bring back in house, especially once they hit that $2-3 million mark. It might be time for you to say, we need to have somebody in house that's a little more invested in this process.
So it also sounds like that certain parts have to be in place. There's a commercial realtor I deal with, and he says, "Listen, you're going to look at a property. That's great. You want to own property, etc. You need your mortgage broker. You need your lawyer. You need your accountant. Yeah, all these components have to be in place. And if it's a rental property, then you're going to need the maintenance support piece. There's a whole building assessment. What you're buying, is it brand new or she got some miles on her? In which case, hey, you might be replacing stuff like everything from the HVAC and on. What should a business have, in your opinion? I'm going to start a business. And then what are the other things people should think of? Okay, I need to tap these resources or have these components in place, regardless which one you're in, whether you're a service industry or you're making products, widgets.
Like key pieces of their like business strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
The biggest one missing, I will say, is usually a sales like go-to-market strategy. And that's the biggest thing when I walk in, I'm like, and it's a turnaround situation. It's messy. There's not here is how we're going to generate revenue. Here's our progress the last 3 months. Here's how we're going to build on that. I would say that is, if you don't have a great sales strategy and marketing strategy, you don't have business. It's like that key pillar that a lot of businesses are missing.
In my last corporate structure, there is a non-for-profit, so a lot of components are already built in. And not coming from an accounting background, my VP of finance, who is a great guy, he said, "You're running the business on a cash flow basis. How much money is in the bank? Can't do that, and this is why, right? Because you got to map everything out, et cetera." It had a lot. The business had a lot of components in there, so I learned by absorption of what worked. Every once in a while, I did have questions because it was also it was attached to a hospital. They were doing finance for a healthcare facility, and what I was running is a separate corp but
Mhm.
attached. and it was not funded by the state. So like it generated so there were interesting conversations that popped up every once in a while, but it was a good learning curve, right? So it helped me understand a few things.
Do you think like when it comes to like base like structure or things like that, the thing that I love the most in the small, like under 20 million space is S corps that are accrual based because they're still passed through, entities. So there's some flexibility. But when you're accrual, you can use your, accounts receivable, accounts payable to help manage tax liability and things like that. So like that's I would say that's my favorite structure.
Are there any resources people should be tapping into? Sometimes it could be grants because whatever you're doing, the community, in this case, the province here is the state or federally, they want to see more of that type of thing. Are there resources that people don't tap into or other benefits, tax benefits that can be instant on now or deferred later?
In a small space, feels like, and but like micro business and small business, they say like micro is under 5 million. Unfortunately, there's less. Now, once you get over 5 million, like that 5 to 20, now you have a lot of tax credits where you can be investing in R&D and things like that. And one of the things I actually work on is legislation pieces to help with like tax incentive renewals for the small space. So there's quite a bit there if you're in new products, new technology. There's less if you're in more classic Main Street business. Main Street incentives have dried up quite a bit. And then the nonprofit space is kind of taking over with some grants, but there's very high application volume for those grants. And there's even some large corporate grants from like AT&T or Verizon where they're giving out like $10,000, $50,000, but they're very well utilized. So it's a pretty long wait list and it feels like the lottery. If you apply for them, you have no idea if you're going to get the grant or not. And a lot of them are also focusing on DEI. So say you're Caucasian male, your chance of getting that grant could be really low. You're kind of on your own, right? Um, and it's sad that it's that way because it's not a current 25-year-old Caucasian male. It's not his fault that men have historically gotten better funding than everyone else. But we are seeing some shift in that. So it's harder for them to get the financing. Now, it could be easier still for them at the bank to get the funding, but it's not going to be grant funding.
Yeah.
But I do think like every small business should be putting in grant applications because it's like buying a lottery ticket. Maybe you'll get that grant. And it does, cost you maybe 10 or $15 to put in your hat into the ring, um, which also helps fund the grants going out into the community. And I definitely would encourage that. And then once you get into that above 5 million space or even over 1 million, you can start playing around with federal tax credits and those things that become available to you if you're in the right industry.
This is kind of a segue. Birds of a feather tend to flock together, is the adage. Do you recommend that, say, someone who's starting a company and get involved, again, depending on the size of it and the nature of the beast, uh, like a BIA, Business Improvement Association, or a business networking group? There are different ones here in Canada, and this one's throughout the U.S. is called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. They're global. So I'll go to this one session in 2019. I retired from one job, and someone says, "Oh, have you ever heard?" And no, and what's this all about? He was doing a presentation. That's why I went, and it seems like it was a network of a mixed bag of different people, and they're all in the tech sector in this particular instance. Some were in pharma, some were in I make widgets that go glow in the dark, whatever the case might be. Do you ever recommend someone network and not so much for sales, but also to find out what's going on in the tempo in the market?
100%. I think, everyone uses this little cliche thing of like, your network is your net worth. This is like reason we've come up with that cliche. Like you have to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, people who have more experience than you. 100%. Like I have about 10 coaching clients, like women who are under 1 million. And one of the first things I would work with them on is who do you know? Like get out there, become a member of a local chambers of commerce, local networking groups, get out there, put in the time, go be friendly. ask people for lunch and coffee, and build a network around yourself, and do some sales work, but also figure out what you don't know and then ask people to teach you. People always want to share their knowledge. It makes them look smart, it makes them feel good. Um, Vernon knows because he runs a podcast helping people showcase their knowledge, right? And people want to come and talk about what they know. And it's the same in networking where you say, I have this problem. Like, do you know how to fix this? No, but I know somebody. Go talk to them, right? People are very generous with their time and know incredibly important to spend that time.
So if someone's sitting in their company and they're kind of going, they know something's off, what are the flags they should be looking at that says, you know what, I'd have to reach out to Disha. Like, what are sometimes, until you actually have a true toothache, do I need a dentist? Do I really? Little ache, not so bad, what's that dark spot on my white porcelain teeth? What should be their trigger mechanism to get a hold of you?
I would say lack of financial clarity, confusion, long answers from accounting that they don't understand. If they don't have their mind around the numbers, that's the big red flag. Obviously, there could be, that's like the first sign of like, I'm not making my business decisions based on financial outcomes. Okay, we need to talk because that's like the first sign that there's something going wrong. The cavity lives in chaos. And before you know it, you're going to have something big that's erupting because the first sign is just shrouding it, right? And this happens with fraud cases like, oh, we don't know, I'm not sure. Like, let me get back to you. Oh, we can't give you a cash flow forecast because, if there's having a behind and a confusion and finance is not open on the table, we can say, let me go investigate that. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Right. Then we have a problem. And then it's like the next phase is like, where's the cash? And now we know you've progressed. So if we go from confusion to limited cash flow, now we're in stage 2. Now we need to start bells and whistles. Like it's time to get help.
So, for a turnaround cycle for a typical company, is that like months? Is that 6 months? Is that a year? Or does it depend how catastrophic the situation they're in the middle of?
That, yeah, depends on how intense it is. But in my not so long experience, having done a couple that, the stabilization usually takes me 3 to 6 months of like, say, if I'm going into like a negative profit and loss situation, so they're bleeding money month over month on operation. 2 to 3 months to get us to where we're breaking even, another 2 to 3 to profit, which is a pretty aggressive timeline and it feels like it for the business where we're changing over people and changing expenses, technologies, things like that pretty rapidly. And then once we get through that first 6 months where we actually have profit, then it's like this stabilization. Okay, we're not going to try and grow. We're just going to try and hold the revenue and keep our profitability and cash back into the business. After that, like year to year and a half, then you can start thinking about how are we going to scale this? Like start optimistic scaling, carefully, allocating small amounts of our excess cash to growth activity again. But at first it's just like time to heal and recover, step back, take a breath, get cash flow. This timeline can be anywhere from that year and a half to 2, 3 years, really depends on the business.
What's the most expensive small problem you've ever seen that was ignored?
But it's got to be technology subscriptions that just month over month, 150 here, 200 there, 75 there. And suddenly we got like $1,000 of just, who's using this? Oh, nobody. Oh, we have 5 users of this AI, whatever. Oh, has anybody used this in the last quarter? No. Oh, well, we've spent $3,000 on it. Right. I would say the thing that bleeds you dry, just like in your normal family budget, it's the eating out, it's the little card swipes, the $30 and the $50 transactions. It's very similar in business because we are very intentional about signing larger contracts and we're thinking about it and we want to get our return on investment. And then we say, oh, that's just $100. Oh, that's just $50, and we swipe our card and we sign up for subscriptions. And before you know it, you can be $1 million company spending $60,000-$70,000 just on subscriptions that aren't being used.
Death by a thousand cuts.
Yes.
Is there a particular vertical that you see that is in need of your services more than others, or is it universal? And it's more how new you are.
I feel like I can answer that in two pieces. One is like in need of me as a person. I come with this like advanced inventory and more complex accounting background after years in the industrial sector. So the companies that are are in distress that need my skill set are going to be more in that inventory based, more complex accounting. Those are the ones that are going to come and they're going to want to pay a premium for my service. It doesn't mean that there aren't service-based businesses that never get distressed, but the cleanup's a little bit easier for them. And there's a lot of consultants and fractionals in the service-based space. So I don't actively go out and compete to bring in a distressed service-based business. Now, if they would come to me and ask for my help, that's fine. But I tend to get the more complex. They have products or they have multiple entities with more complex reporting requirements, things like that is pretty much what I end up bringing in as far as clients.
You know what? Just as you described that, I'm like, you know what? We've been focusing on just a given entity with one person or, a team, not multiples. So that could be a whole different podcast right there. Oh, yeah. I've got a small herd of businesses and I'm kind of rocking the
Mhm.
boat. Speaking of other businesses, Flux, what's the scoop on that? Tell me a story.
Yes. Okay. So you want to hear this story. Now I'm going to act like a kid and laugh and like talk because this is like my baby, right? It's this cup. You saw it online, right? Last year, and I'm in finance brain. That's very obvious. And it's like this certain rigid structure where, yes, I educate myself, but I feel like I'm always in this like a little bit of a straitjacket of like, there's so much compliance and complexity and like the creative side of me shows up a little bit in being able to look at scenarios and what might happen and what's going to happen with our marketing budget. But it always feels a little stifling, if that makes sense. And I'm not complaining because my it's my primary passion and my day-to-day work. But one of the things I've been finding over this consulting for years is that I don't truly understand marketing in a really deep way. And so I was thinking about going and taking a class and maybe doing some marketing classes or product classes to kind of expand my knowledge in a deeper way on like human behavior prediction and these kind of pieces that go into the marketing. And I started looking at different classes and I was like, oh, 10,000 for that one, 15,000 for that one. And then I said, what if I launched a product and learned marketing on that product and spent the money to build a new business that I have to market from the ground up? And I was like, oh, well, what would you do? And I was like, well, there's this thing I've been looking for, and that is, as this middle-aged woman, I'm trying to get microplastics out of my diet. And when you go to the coffee shop and you buy this paper cup lined with plastic with a coffee, statistics say 25,000 particles of microplastic in that beverage within 10 minutes. And none of us are chugging down our coffee in less than 10 minutes. It's hot, right? So by the time it's cool enough to drink, it's basically just infused with microplastic prior. And so I've been looking for like a glass alternative. And I like a Yeti for when I'm camping. I don't particularly enjoy the feeling of drinking out of that thick, clunky, and it leaks on the side, kind of situation. I was like, we need something better. So I started this whole product research phase and reaching out to manufacturers, explaining what I was looking for, and talking about, I want this glass top, I want this mouthfeel. Anyway, it's a collaborative design process. We now have Select. So I've gone through this product development and discovery phase, and then I brought it to market and got my first inventory batch in August last year. Then into like the whole build a Shopify site and go get a tech platform and now social media and learning how to use to create and generate social media ads. Took it to its first show to pick up, coffee shops that want to purchase it. So it's on shelves now at a few boutique coffee shops. So we have some retail customers coming in. So it's been incredibly fun for me because I'm using this entirely different side of me. And I'm also in the learner seat in this. So I get to use curiosity and this piece that I just don't, unless I'm taking a course, I don't really get to sit in that seat of like, let me learn this. And, spending hours on my Shopify site and YouTube University of like, how I do that. Oh, I could do this. Like, oh, let's try that. And friends giving me input. Like my first logo, they're like, that's looks bad. I was like, okay, well, Canva, let's try again. Redesigning the logo. Okay, that's better. What do you guys think? Oh yeah, that's a good one. All right, we'll stick with that for now. Just being able to play around with it and have it like this sandbox product, but also it's a great product and people love it. And everyone who has one is like, how did nobody make this before? This is amazing. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Well, Disha, I got to tell you, my wife already bought one, and
Oh,
I'm looking at it and going, totally unbeknownst to me. I'm looking at it and then looking at the product that you have online and going, oh, that's the same thing. You have a special promo, by the way. What's a promo about in regards to that?
if you go to siplux.com, SIPLUX.com, and use code Bernie, you'll get 25% off as a reward for listening to this podcast.
Thank you so much. Now, two other quick important things. What areas do you service on this globe, and how do we reach you if you're going, you know what? I need Disha.
Well, I tend to work inside the US for fractional work because I know the US tax code and things like that. Um, and the best way to reach me is either LinkedIn, and I'm easy to find because I'm the only Diesha Cooper, or you can email me at Diesha@Execuly.com. So either way, it's pretty easy to get my handles.
I want to say thank you to Diesha Cooper. I really appreciate your time. And you know what? Reach out to Disha. She's seen too many strong leaders blindsided by problems they didn't know were building up. And you can't know all things, and sometimes you don't want to learn them the hard way either. And she decided to work upstream where small changes prevent big damage. So that's kind of the key. Whether you're a non-for-profit or for-profit, or you want to understand about the coffee cup and why the double-hulled glass container is really handy and useful, reach out to Disha, and I think you'll have a good conversation.
Everything you heard today is for educational purposes only. It's not professional advice. Before you act on anything, talk to a certified expert in your area. Your accountant, your lawyer, someone who knows your situation. We share perspectives. You make the decisions. Want more? Head over to blog.knack4business.com, packed with practical episodes on AI, marketing, leadership, and growth. No fluff, just the good stuff. Subscribe while you're there. Until next time, keep building.